right, I think we can get started, everyone. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us for our Envirothon 101 webinar today. Let's see here. All right, so let's introduce ourselves to you first. Leica, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Leica Hansen. For pronunciation, if you think of a lake, I'm from Michigan, so it usually helps to think of a lake and then But yeah, I just graduated from Brigham Young University in April and started with Pierce Conservation District as their conservation education specialist. And I get the chance to work with students K through 12 and also get to help out with Envirothon this year. So we're excited to talk to you about it.
Great, thanks, Leica. And I'm Lily Kaysen. I work at the Snohomish Conservation District as the Youth Education Coordinator, and am also, as of recently, the Vice Chair for the Washington State Envirothon. So I've been working with Envirothon in Washington since 2017, and I'm excited to share with you a little bit of information about it today. So let's do a little bit of orientation first for the webinar. If you have any questions for us, we will leave a little bit of time at the end, but I'm happy to answer some kind of as we go along too. So if you use the chat box on your screen, you should be able to type questions in there. And also you can use the raise your hand feature if you'd like to be unmuted. And part of why we chose to do Zoom for this webinar is because that's going to be the platform where we'll be doing our virtual Envirothon this year. So hopefully we can kind of get people familiar with it if they are not already overly familiar with Zoom at this point. So things we're going to cover in this webinar, we're going to talk a little bit about what Envirothon is, how the competition works, what are some tools and resources that you can use with your students or that teams can use on their own for preparing for the competition, a little bit of information about what we know about what the competition is going to look like in 2021 so far, and then also have some time for questions for you.
Yeah, and to get started, we want to kind of involve everyone. So we've got a Kahoot game to play. I'm sure all of the educators here are used to Kahoot, but if not, Lily can show us on her screen how to play.
All right, and this is one where I'll show you how to find this resource a little bit later. Because this is one of the tools that we put together that we have on our website for preparation as well. So if you just go to kahoot.it, like it says up there, and then once you go to that website, you can use your phone or you can pull up another browser on your computer or whatever device you might have. And then you can type in that game pin if you give your nickname, and then it'll show up on the screen for us. Type in the chat if you have any issues with getting in for that. All right, we got a few people. Give just another few seconds for some people if they want to join in. If you don't want to join, that's fine too. You can just watch.
I like the trout and hoot.
Yeah, we've got some
bit about wildlife.
Nicknames. So. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to click start. All right, so this is our Pacific Northwest Animal Identification quiz. And so this is kind of similar to the wildlife section of Envirothon. So we'll do this quiz here. The question comes up on the screen there, and it's got the options for the answer. And then on your device, you should just see those 4 options. So it'll have just the 4 colors. And so you choose which answer you think that is. Ooh, everybody got it right on this one. How about that?
Nice.
Okay. All right, everybody knows beaver. Let's go for our next question. What type of animal does this belong to? All right. Mammal. left this print? Canine, feline, rodent, or avian? All right, and so just to show you kind of some of the functionality of this game too, you can show the photo again. So if you want to explain like why an answer would be a certain way, you can show this to the students as well. And I'll do that on our next question, because we've got another print question. Who would have left this print? All right, yeah, so it can be a little tricky. So you can show the photos then and talk about the difference between animals that might have claws that are permanently out and ones that retract. And that's one of the ways we can tell between canine and feline prints. So you can click on those photos and kind of go through those. Elsie's really doing well. What part of the animal is this? This is a photo of some equipment from our borrowing boxes. Claws.
Bonnie.
All right, we got Bonnie is ahead. Let's just do a little, I think a couple more. Whose lower jaw does this belong to? Wolf, deer, horse, or bear? Bonnie pulled ahead in the lead. All right, and what animal does this belong to? This will be our final question. Cooper's hawk. I think that one's a little bit of a tricky one. All right, so you can kind of see a little bit of that Kahoot, kind of a fun way to kind of go through the material and learn a little bit about wildlife. This is one of the tools that we have for students to be able to use. And I'll show you how to get access to that later as well. All right, I just wanted to kind of get us in the mood for talking about Envirothon. So let's get back a little bit into the nuts and bolts. So Envirothon, who organizes it? Envirothon is organized in Washington State by the Washington State Conservation Commission, Conservation Society, the Washington Association of Conservation Districts, and then conservation districts around the state. So I just put a couple of logos on there from the ones in Puget Sound, Pierce, King, and Snohomish. But there are districts from all over the state that are participating, and depending on where you are, your district's involvement might look a little bit different. So some districts have a little bit more resources to put into it than others, and that's why you'll see some of us maybe have more resources on our specific website. And so we are always happy to help support other districts as well if we can. All right, Leica, I think this one was you, right?
Yeah, I can talk about it. So the Envirothon mission, overall, you can read the quote here about the official quote, but we just want to help kids get involved in the environmental sector and get them some understanding of natural resources, and then have them feel prepared to go into college and into their careers in the future. And we have a couple of reviews and little success stories, I guess, from Envirothon later on, but this is just like their first step into this. And yeah, that's our goal. So first off, Envirothon, the competition is based off of teams. So you have your 5 high school students and 1 adult advisor. So once you get your team, your Fab 5 from the same high school or homeschool group or organization or club, then you're ready to compete in the Envirothon competition. And then there's another 5 Fab 5 is a good theme here, I think, but there's 5 natural resource testing categories. So 4 of them stay the same every year, and then 1 changes based off of where the national competition is. So this one will be in Nevada this year. So they're
Nebraska.
Sorry, yeah, Nebraska. Also very important for water resources, but yeah, the topic is water resource management, and all of the other ones will stay the same. So we have aquatic ecology, forestry, soil and land use, and wildlife. And then I guess we touched on this a little bit before, but there's so many reasons why students and teachers should participate in Envirothon. One, because it exposes them to careers in environmental science and natural resources. And then also it provides hands-on learning. In normal years, it provides a lot more, but this year we're still working hard to get as much as we can to students this year. And then as you're working in a team of 5 and with your advisor, you also build a lot of good teamwork skills, a lot of cooperation and communication, which is really important for, college and workplaces. And then it also looks really great on a resume or college application. Just saying that you participate in Envirothon might lead you to careers where, like Lily, you help organize things for Envirothon or do things like that in the future. So it's a really good pathway to get where you want to be. And then occasionally, or I think most years they do have cash prizes if you win the North American competition. I think last year's 15,000, but that also depends on sponsorships and how that year works out. But if that's incentive, then it might be good incentive for your students. And I think Lily has some of our quotes and reviews from Envirothon.
Yeah, so this, we polled some former Envirothon participants in the past to get some information about what they're doing now and kind of what they got from Envirothon. And so I just have a couple examples I wanted to show you. This one is from somebody who participated back in 1994 and 95, Christopher Renshaw, who is now a wildland firefighter and credits Envirothon as helping start along the college and career path that he went down. We heard from some other alumni as well. Michelle from New York, who participated in 2011, 2013, is now an ornithologist, and said that especially the wildlife ID and getting hands-on with the macroinvertebrates were some of her favorite parts and helped her choose her path of ornithology. And Lindsay N. from Virginia, this one I think is really interesting because she participated as a student in 1998 through 99, and then now works for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and has started working on the other side of things, working with Envirothon, representing the organization as a career professional, and has been working with teams since then. We also, just to mention, the chair of the Washington State Envirothon participated as a high school student, and she said that that helped her decide that she wanted to get into a conservation-related career. And so that's kind of how she ended up working for a conservation district. So let's talk a little bit about how Envirothon works. In a typical year, we have a regional competition. And so within Washington, there are smaller regions broken down where we'll have competitions. And then the winners from each county in the region will go on to state, have the state competition, and then move on to the North American competition. So what it would usually look like at the regional competition, it's usually a one-day event. Students will come and they take tests in each of the 4 subject matters that we mentioned earlier, and then they do an oral presentation on that current topic. So they do tests using hands-on things. So like you can see in this photo, they have a skull in front of them. They're trying to identify the skull. From there, the winner of that one-day competition will go on to state. In state, we typically host a 2-day, overnight competition. And so we've got 2 days where students can kind of do a number of different things. In 2019, the last year we were able to host the state competition. We were at Camp Don Bosco in Carnation, Washington. And so students came to the camp and we got to do some cool activities with them. So they participated in some pre-competition activities, getting to meet students from across the state, doing some kind of icebreaker activities to learn about each other. We also took them on a tour of a nearby farm, which in 2019, the current topic was agriculture. And so that was very applicable to what they were doing their presentation on for that year. They also get to interact with natural resources professionals. So we try to have our testing stations managed by people who are working in natural resources. They're also the ones that are helping us design the tests that students will take. So we really like to get that involvement with the natural resource professionals for students. They get to do hands-on tests. So here you can see some students doing some of the aquatic tests, looking at turbidity for the water, doing some macroinvertebrate and other biological sampling. And they also get time to prepare for their oral presentation. This is a really good experience for students to practice their presentation skills and being persuasive and working in a team on that. So usually we give them an opportunity to work together to prepare themselves during the day of the competition, and then they're going to present. And typically we give the state information, or excuse me, the information for the oral presentation about 2 weeks in advance. And then students can prepare a bit ahead of the competition as well. And then at the end, we have a ceremony where we usually have a speaker talk, and then we give the awards out to the winners. This year is obviously going to be a little bit different. So let me tell you what we know at this point about that. So we've decided that we are not going to have any regional events in Washington this year. And our thinking on that is that it'll help us to put our resources towards doing the state competition and also preparing ways for teams to be more supported this year. So we will not have regional events, so we just have the state competition. And that is going to be a virtual event that your team will participate in for 2 days during the week of May 17th through 21st. And then the winner of that would participate in the North American competition, which right now is still scheduled to be in Nebraska, I believe, last time I checked. But I believe, I won't be surprised if we find out from them soon that they are doing a virtual competition as well. So let me give you a glimpse into the state competition. It's going to be virtual. Each team is going to compete over a course of 2 days. So once your team registers, we will take in all the information about how many teams we have and use that to assign your slot for when you're going to compete. Teams will either be competing Monday and Tuesday or Wednesday and Thursday, and then there will be a closing ceremony. Each team will be assigned the test taking and presentation time slots in advance, and we will have only one team per school. So if you have more than one at your school, we'll need to narrow that down. And if you need our support on figuring out how to do that, then feel free to reach out. I wanted to show you a sample schedule. So this is still being finalized, but a draft just so that you can kind of get a sense for what the schedule is going to look like. And I will make these slides available to you after the end of our webinar so that you can take a look closer if you want. I know that might be kind of small to read for some of you. So kind of what it'll look like, let's say we have less than 20 teams sign up for our state competition. Then we will do our competition Monday and Tuesday. So Monday, the teams would log in to Zoom in the morning at 8:30 so that we can get started with a welcome ceremony, outlining kind of how the day is going to go, introducing people, doing an icebreaker with the students, and then starting the competition. So we'll be having testing stations in Zoom rooms, like breakout rooms, and then also presentations as well. So you can kind of see, looking on here, that it's basically a flip-flop of either your team will participate in the testing stations on day 1 and then do the presentation day 2, or the reverse. And so you can see the time commitment will be a little bit different depending on which schedule you have. So the testing will take place between 9:30 and 3, and you'll have about 45 minutes in each test to be doing the tests, and then doing the presentation. And so we're trying to figure out how many teams we're going to have this year because we're not quite sure yet. We still have the registration deadline out. And so we're planning, if there are 20 or fewer teams, then we will have our awards ceremony on Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. If we have more than 20 teams, then you'll see this schedule repeated on Wednesday and Thursday, with teams 21 through 40, and then we'll have the ceremony on Friday. So I wanted to point something out to you. We are still figuring out, some of the nuts and bolts of what the test is going to look like online. There's another team within the Envirothon committee that's working on the logistics of the test itself. And so they're still figuring out that testing platform. And I know that doing it online is not as exciting for all of those reasons that were just listed of why we love doing this hands-on activity, getting students out in the water, getting them using these tools hands-on. And so one thing I wanted to kind of point out is, in this photo here, this is the team from Stanwood High School from 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019. And you can see there's at least one student on the team that was there every year. And so Envirothon is something where you can build from year to year. And so if this year is not a year that is quite as robust, then I think it can just be a building year. Having students learn what are the expectations of this competition, what are the subjects like, and how can we incorporate this into years going forward. I had one teacher tell me that her team, the first year they participated, they did absolutely no preparation before going. They just signed up and they went and had a great time. And so I think you could do that if you wanted to have a really minimal preparation. So just choosing some students and having them participate with the idea that you can gain interest and build for future years as well.
Yeah, so like Lily said, this could be just like a preparatory year for everyone, but we also have a lot of resources compiled to help you prepare for this year. And so there's some online study materials that are on the state website. There's past tests that are also on the website, videos, books or like articles online to read, and then also online activities that you can do. So you can still have a chance to get outside with your students if possible. And then we have other ones based on the area as well, but Lily can show us a little bit about what's on the website already, or I can walk through it with you guys. So we have our 4 main subjects again, and so you can go through and click on any of them and you can see what we already have compiled, and we'll be adding to this in the next couple of months too, as you guys are preparing and as we're preparing. But there's already a lot of great resources. So for forestry, they have like a plant ID slideshow or Quizlet that you can look at, or a little more in-depth on how to ID from, I think it was Oregon State has a really good website too. And so we've kind of like reached out. We have all these resources compiled here on the website. So definitely somewhere for students to look first if they're trying to prepare. And then, yeah, we also have the learning objectives and supporting activities. We can kind of walk you through each of the subjects, topics, and the more in-depth things that you want to know going in to the testing scenarios. So a lot of resources. That one goes really in depth. Honestly, it covers a lot of things that I did in my forestry class in college. So really great resource. And that's kind of similar for all of the other topics as well. Then we have the teacher resources as well. There's a teacher handbook that helps educators, you guys, get connected and understanding what the topics are and how to help your team as the advisor. And so that one's also pretty in-depth. A good read for when you have a hot chocolate or something too.
Yeah, so the teacher handbook on there is very in-depth and has a lot of resources about what the competition looks like and what the topics are, and also a little bit about, like, for the oral presentation, what the rubric might look like for scoring, so that you can know what kind of tips to give your students to prepare. And so one thing I wanted to point out with this too is I think that if you wanted to also do kind of a minimal preparation year for students, one thing you could do is meet and assign students 1 or 2 of the topics and have them become experts in that topic. And so you can point them to these resources as well, assign a student, aquatic, ecology, or forestry, or let them choose, which one they're interested in, and they can become the team expert on that and share that with the rest of the students. Yeah, so on this page, there's some resources for you with that handbook. You can also go on a link to the current competition information, which takes you to the North American page that has kind of more in-depth resources related to that water resources in Nebraska, kind of specific content, and then each of these topics on here.
Yep. And then Snohomish Conservation District, where Lily's from, has a really great resource list as well. And yeah, I guess, yeah, Lily can go ahead and talk about what else they have.
Sure. So I'll show you both of these links on here, but we've got a few links for where you can find some additional resources for preparing. Our website, and then also the North Carolina website, has some really great things as well. So I'll show you both of those. We also have borrowing boxes, is what we're calling it at our district, where it has some of the supplies like you saw in that Kahoot game, where there's skulls and furs and things like that, so that you can borrow those and use that to prepare with your students, so that they still get to have that hands-on component. And I have had students borrow that themselves with me before. So if they want to be the ones to organize that, they can. I have equipment like that for Snohomish County and Camino Island teams. There are other districts that have that as well. And so I encourage you to reach out to your district to find out if they have some supplies like that that you can borrow. And if not, let them know that you're interested in borrowing something like that, because there are ways that they might be able to get it, those resources potentially for the following year at least. Because we have shared out with other districts what we've put together and can help support that as well. Some other things that are coming up, we are planning to do some virtual content-based trainings with natural resources professionals. So most likely those are going to be some of the people who are writing the tests. And so our plan is to do some virtual trainings with them in March and April. So that could look like having an expert work on or help share about how you can do skills with soil, having a little bit of interaction about their career as well. Talking about aquatics testing, water quality testing, that sort of thing. So each of those kind of 4 subject matters, we're planning to do some of those trainings. So keep an eye out on our website, and we'll be posting those as soon as we've got those scheduled. We're also planning to do some how-to resources to prepare you for the actual testing itself. Like I mentioned, we're still working out what the testing platform will look like. And so once we have that information, we want to share resources so that you can be prepared and not have the test itself cause some glitches for you. So let me show you what some of those websites were that I linked. So the first one is the Snohomish Conservation District website. And so if you go on our page, and you can go through youth education to get to the Envirothon resources, but this is what the page we have looks like. These are our borrowing bins that have different supplies in there, including some of the tools and equipment you might need for soils or forestry or aquatics, things like that, and skulls and equipment like that as well. So in Snohomish County, people can borrow those from us. We also have some online resources at the bottom that everyone is welcome to use. So I can open up some of these and show you what those look like. So one of those is Quizlet. Some of you may have used that before. We've got resources for each of the subjects in here, and these are some of the terminology and things that the students might need to know. And so Quizlet's kind of a cool website because you can use flashcards for studying, and you can have students create their own as well. So we've got some in here for them to study with. And so they can go in, look at the
A thin layer of specialized cells within a tree's trunk that divide to produce new inner bark cells to the outside and new sapwood cells to the inside.
And you can kind of play games with them, matching with the different sides and everything as well. So yeah, Quizlet. There's also the plant ID. This is the slideshow that once you click on it, it opens up so that you can go through and see some of the plants that we have here in Washington. And so students can kind of test themselves by going through the slideshow there. Our Kahoot page, you should be able to get on there. You will have to create a free account to be able to use Kahoot. But once you're on there, you can access the different quizzes we have built. I would say that we need to build more. And so if you want to have your students build them, that would also be great. And we also have some recommended site visits. So I would highly encourage, if you have the ability to do additional preparation with your students, to get out in the field with them, especially since we're not going to be able to do it for the competition. If you're able to do it safely in a small group, we have some sites that we have listed on here where you can go for collecting water, where you can go for looking at soil, and then also other places you might be able to get resources. So some of these you can see are outside of Snohomish County. So depending on where you are, it might be useful to you. If you are outside of Snohomish County, you can ask for something like this from your conservation district. They might have recommendations about where to go to get a good spot to check a soil sample and look at the horizon levels and things like that. So I just want to kind of walk you through those, and that link is on the PowerPoint. So I'll share that. I'm going to put that in the chat there as well so that you can see that. And then I also wanted to show you the North Carolina page. And I will share this link in the chat. This one I think is really great. It's some of their resources are going to be North Carolina specific, so that part won't help us as quite as much in Washington, but they have some really useful things on here. Like I particularly like this tips for a successful program that was written by some advisors for a team. And so if you're starting out a new team, this could be helpful for you. They have suggestions about how to run the group and how to kind of assign. They recommend assigning each student 2 subjects, how to set expectations, what the expectations would be like. So if you're kind of able to do a more in-depth preparation with them, you could do it based on what these recommendations are, I think. And they also have some other really cool things on here. They have some different presentations that you can look at, and they have some quizzes and things. And then down here at the bottom, they also have Jeopardy for each of the subjects. And their version of Jeopardy is, some of them are specific to North Carolina, so some of it won't apply, but a lot of them are similar. And so I wanted to also show you we do have a Jeopardy that we made for Washington State. Some of it is still not filled out, but I can kind of show you what this one looks like and make it available to you to download as a PowerPoint file. And so that way you can adapt it as well if you wanted to add in some more types of questions or change it up, or have your students do that as well. So you can have them go in here. Go into the questions. It'll give you the answer, and then you can click home to get back to that main screen. So I just wanted to show you a glimpse of what that Jeopardy looks like and that North Carolina team. So I'm going to get that Jeopardy uploaded onto our website, so you'll be able to download that there if you'd like. And I will also can send it to your email. Yeah, so let me get back to.
Yeah. So Lily showed us a bunch of great ways to kind of get prepared, and we want to make this as fun as possible as we can, because usually it's kind of like a highlight of the year for students that are involved, but we really want to help in any way that we can. And so if you have any questions or things that you think of that you might need from us, or things that we can work on for you guys, you can talk to your regional coordinators, or I know me and a couple of other people from different conservation districts have reached out to teachers and try and tell them a little bit more about Envirothon, help them in any way we can. So yeah, feel free to ask us any questions. We really love participating and helping out with Envirothon, and so we definitely want it to be a success this year as best we can. And yeah, I think our registration is, the priority deadline is February 12th, but and also when you register, you don't have to have all of your students' names yet. If you have a couple in mind that you still haven't reached out to, that's totally fine. You can just kind of fill in blank or filler names for them and then recruit as you go. But we definitely want everyone to try and participate this year and hopefully get something out of it because we want, yeah, that's what we would hope for.
Yeah, so we encourage you to sign up by that priority deadline by the 12th to help us get a little bit of an idea too of how many teams we're going to have signed up for this year. So like Leica said, if you still need to work out the details of your students afterwards, you can. And I've heard some teachers say that they've had success with just kind of picking students and assigning them to be on their team. We do have, I see I've got a question in the chat about the team size. We do typically have 5 students on the team, but sometimes teams will choose 1 or 2 alternate members. And so if they are to go on further in the competition, they'll have 5 participating, but they can have those alternate members helping the team prepare and be prepared to step in the day of if they need to. In the past, we have been able to have alternates participate not as part of the competition, but participate in the activities so that they get that experience as well. And so I think that this year it'll depend on how many teams we get if they're able to do that. Does that answer your question, Elsie? Let me know if you have more questions about that. Yeah, so that is some of the resources that we have. I put some links into the chat. I will also send you a copy of this presentation and some of those resources so that you can access those with your team. Both Leica and I are happy to answer any questions if you want to reach out to us. And then if you have any questions now, I would also be happy to answer those. Or if you, I know we have a few teachers who've participated in the past. If you have some experiences that you'd like to share or tips, if you want to do the raise your hand feature, then I can unmute you if you'd like to share. All right, let's see. Chelsea?
Yeah, I thought, because I've been around Envirothon for a long time, so I thought I'd speak for a few minutes. Don't want to take too long, obviously. So I competed in Envirothon when I was a kid. And then I used to work for Okanagan Conservation District. So after college, I started writing wildlife tests, and then I actually ran regional and state Envirothon a couple of years ago. I teach biology at the Okanagan High School now, and the first summer before I started teaching at the high school, I ended up taking our team to National Envirothon, and something I noticed, it kind of made me think about it on the North Carolina website. If you are planning on putting a team together for the first time, and we did this too when I was a kid, especially if it's your first time doing it or you haven't been around Envirothon much, telling kids to focus in on one subject, maybe 2, maybe kind of have like a backup person for the other subject. But it was really beneficial when I was a kid to have us focus in on one subject matter. Obviously, you hope that all of them will know something about the other subjects, but I think that was one of the things, especially getting started, that is super helpful. And then when it comes to the oral presentations, I'm sure, we're all teachers on here, so I think don't have to say this too much, but having them practice multiple times, because I've noticed in my experience, at least, the kids that seem like they have the most confidence usually become the most terrified once they get up in front of other adults that they don't know. So having kids practice as much as possible can be really important too. Okay, I could talk about Envirothon for like an hour, so I'll just put it off then unless someone has specific questions.
Yeah, it's helpful to hear your experience, Chelsea. And I think, especially if you participated kind of on 3 sides, I guess. So yeah, if there's tips that people can share, that's great. Yeah, and I think the oral presentation, there is a copy of a former rubric on the website if you wanted to take a look at that too, so you can kind of give students ideas about what they'll be graded on. Yeah, Chelsea, did you have anything else you wanted to share?
I don't know, like off the top of my head.
Do you have a team together this year?
I do. Yeah, actually, I'm hoping that we're allowed to bring another one because I have at least 4 other. Actually, no, I think I might have 2 full teams if we're allowed to. So, but I know that I don't want to take place for another high school. So yeah, we do have a team this year. We had my first year teaching at the Okanagan. We had had to start rebuilding that stuff again. But yeah, trying to think of anything like big takeaways from Envirothon. I don't know if there'll be time, and it might be kind of weird this year with online, but usually we got to talk to the natural resource professionals either like before or after taking the test, usually for a couple minutes. But I guess if we're doing that training with natural resource professionals in March and April, that might not be as necessary, because I think talking to adults in those fields is really beneficial to students, because you kind of get to see like, oh, I like this. What can I actually do with it after high school?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that we thought about being something that would be sad to miss with the virtual format is because you don't get the kind of organic conversations happening in the way that you do usually. So hopefully if we do those opportunities in March and April, then students can have some opportunities then as well as during the competition. Yeah.
Oh, one other big thing is, and I don't know how exactly this is going to work this year, but at least with like Envirothon in person, there's usually quite a few questions and in a like stapled packet. And I've always told students, and I remember doing this in high school, we always rip up the packet and split it up and then flip flop and then go over it together in the team. So little tips and tricks of how to take tests quickly as a 5-person team. Start thinking about that kind of stuff, because if you have people on your team that like to debate about every single question just because they're perfectionists, which is great to a point, but you also only have a lot of time to take a ton of questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good advice. Yeah, and I think, again, also thinking about this year as like, it's going to be different this year. We won't have the same experience that we do every year. And so like, what are the ways that we can pull advantages out of it this year? Can you get different students that maybe wouldn't participate or be able to do that traveling in a normal year to join in and see if they like it? Yeah. Are there any question for all of you? Are there any resources that you would like to see to help you prepare your teams that we have not shown you? If there are things like that, I would love to hear about it so that we can kind of pull those together and provide more support for you. And if you think of things later, you're welcome to send me an email as well, because it may take a little bit to kind of absorb some of those resources and get your head around it. All right, well, I don't see any questions in the chat box right now, so we can wrap up our presentation for today. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to Leica or myself. I will send a follow-up email with some information in it. And if you have any additional questions, you're welcome to hang on if you want to ask those. But if not, then I hope you have a good rest of your day, and hopefully we'll see you at Envirothon soon.